pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with an original BookTube tag. I have originated a couple other tags, most famously, in double quotes, the page 112 tag, also the 10 books tag, which I don't really do anymore. And like those two, this one isn't a really traditional BookTube tag where you have a list of prompts that you respond to. It's more of a suggested method for doing a video. And this one is called the Booktube Parasite tag. I thought long and hard about different names and thought Parasite might be a little strong for some snowflakes out there, but it's actually the best word for what this tag is all about. Of course, a parasite, in order to live, leeches on or sponges off a host in order to sustain life, and that's how this video works too. Do you ever get that feeling where you feel like making a booktube, but what are you going to talk about? It's not time to do a wrap-up, it's not Friday, you can't do a Friday reads, you're not ready to do a full review of anything, none of the tags are appealing, so what kind of video can you make? Well, this might be the tag for you. The Booktube Parasite tag, and the way that it works is you select somebody else's booktube video and then leech onto it and make your own video based on the contents of that booktube video. In other words, you make a video talking about all or most of the books that other booktuber discussed on their video. One way to envision this is you're going to treat another booktuber's video, and it might be a recent video, it might be a really old video from their archives, as if it was a book prize long list or short list, and do a reaction video. And it's not personal about that booktuber. Obviously, avoid like the plague making any negative comments about the host booktuber whatsoever. I didn't need to spell that out, did I? But it's your personal reaction to the books they talked about in that video. Okay, so that's one way to think about it. I think any booktube video out there that has a lot of books in it is fair game for you to leech onto. For example, a monthly wrap-up, a Friday reads, a TBR, a book haul, any of those. I think if it's just a full review of one or two books, this tag isn't going to work with that so much. And if it's a traditional tag like Karl Anderson's Future Classics tag, I don't see that being a parasite leeching onto that and commenting on some other booktuber's choices for that tag makes any sense. You can do whatever you want, right? But do your own answers to the original tag in that case, right? But I think this would work really well with like I say, monthly wrap-ups, Friday reads, TBRs, book hauls, stuff like that. I also think this tag could be a great way to dive back into some of your favorite booktubers' archives and do a parasite video about, for example, one of Steve Donahue's mail hauls from, when he first started on BookTube, October 1915 or whenever that was. That'd be interesting, right? Or Jennifer of Insert Literary Puns monthly wrap-up from February 2017. That's how I'm planning to use it in the future. But also, today, I'm going to debut this tag by leeching onto or piggybacking off of quite a recent video by Chris of Bookish Cauldron, and I'll be getting to my actual tag as soon as I've explained it just a bit more. So this is different from a shout-out video where you just talk about the booktubers you like. I assume you're going to choose as your host video to leech onto a video from some booktuber that you like, but you're not just going to praise that booktuber, but you're going to talk about the books they talk about. This is a book-centered tag. You should mention the video, put a link in your show notes or your description box. I'm even going to put it in my title. I don't think you need to ask booktubers permission. This is in the public domain, and the point of BookTube is to dialogue with each other, so that if you feel like you need to. I guess I've asked Chris's permission because I was kind of brainstorming this tag with him. And I think you don't need to talk about all the books mentioned on that video, but I think if you're not going to talk about most of them, this isn't really the tag for you, but that's just my thoughts. So some variations on the tag, and I want to make sure that everybody understands you don't have to do these things to do this tag. But one thing that you could do is, and I'm going to do that today, I'm going to choose some of the books that I was interested in from Chris's video And I'm going to do some more research. Like, I'm going to read some free Kindle previews and kind of report back about, now that I've done more research and read some more book reviews or whatever, which of them would I be most interested in trying. So that's one thing that you could do, but it's not necessary to do that. You could just talk about how well did Chris sell me on these books from his monthly wrap-up. It also could, if it's a recent TBR, it could be a way of kind of inviting yourself to do a buddy read with that booktuber. But again, that's just a little tweak, a little variation you could do, but that's not the main point of the tag, and I don't imagine most people would use it that way. Okay, so that was my long introduction to the tag. So I have chosen from my booktube buddy, Chris, of Chris Bookish Cauldron, I have chosen his weekend reads video from last Friday, April 13th, 2018. The link is in the show notes. And let me go over the books that he talked about. He told us he was reading The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller in preparation to read the new one, Circe. And I have talked on my channel before, I have a real allergy to myth retellings and fiction. I do plan to maybe do a video about that once I kind of get my head around it, and maybe one way to get my head around it would be to try one of these and just kind of process that allergy, because I am really militantly opposed to mythic and fairy tale retellings and fiction. And I should probe that a bit. It might make for an interesting video, maybe. He was also reading a collection of speculative short fiction called Ambiguity Machines by Vandana Singh, and that one didn't interest me because I don't like speculative fiction. Again, I'd like to try it occasionally to understand why and maybe break through, but not at this time. He also talked about a fantasy novel that was part of a series. I didn't catch the name, and I really hate fantasy. He knows that. We joke about it all the time, and so no, I wouldn't be trying that one. So then on to the more literary books that he talked about, and he did talk about quite a few. He's going to be reading Frankenstein in Baghdad by Ahmed Sadawi, which is on the short list for the Man Booker International Prize, translated by Jonathan Wright. I've heard quite a few reviews of this, and I don't think it's going to be for me. It sounds a little bit too gimmicky and contrived for me. And I'm not as opposed to other novels being retold in a new novel as I am to myths and fairy tales, but I still just tell me your own story. I do have a bit of a prejudice against it, but... He also talked about Peach by Emma Glass, a new novel, which he said was out of Ireland, an experimental novel that's heavily focused on sexual abuse and really raw, intense novel. I'd like to try it. I've heard mixed reviews of it. So this is one of the ones that I'm going to pull some Kindle previews to get more of a sense of it. And the next one he talked about was a gay novel called Some Hell by Patrick Nathan from Grey Wolf Press. And Chris said Grey Wolf Press is his favorite press and they can do no wrong, so that's a high recommendation. I'm not particularly familiar with them, but probably I've read books published by Grey Wolf Press. I don't know. This one, the way he talked about it, and what else I've heard about it, I worry it might descend into tragedy porn, because there's a lot of tragedy in it. There's the father's suicide and there's other tragic stuff, if I'm remembering correctly. But I am going to do a Kindle preview of that today. Let's see. Eric just talked about it on his book haul video last night. The next one he talked about, I was really interested in, and then I lost interest, so I'm not sure if Chris has revived my interest in it or not. Rainbirds by Clarissa Guenoan, who is a Singaporean Indonesian writer. It sounded really good. It's set in Japan, so it's like Singaporean Indonesian writer's debut novel about, is it an Indonesian woman who's living and teaching in Japan and then gets murdered. Catherine of Literary Prints and I were both really excited about it. She got a review copy and she didn't like it, so that's all I know. But the more I've kind of heard about it and thought about it, I'm not sure if that was for me. I might try it, but I'm not going to bother doing a Kindle preview of that today. Krista also talked about the new Kit DeWall novel, just came out in the last week or a couple of weeks, The Trick to Time. It's her second novel. I'm not sure how many novels she's had out. I've never read her, and I only learned recently that she is a Caribbean Irish writer, mixed race, and that sounds fascinating just in and of itself, so I'm going to do a Kindle preview of that. And the last one he talked about was a historical novel set in the early 16th century, I believe, The Western Wind by Samantha Harvey. I thought I'd heard Mercedes talk about it on her channel recently, and he'd heard her on her podcast, but I hadn't heard that episode, so I think I also heard it on her channel. It's kind of a mystery, I think, and I have a strong allergy to mysteries, but this one sounds like one I want to try, so I've already downloaded the Kindle preview, and I see what I think of the writing, because See, I don't like mysteries, but if it's literary and it has some mysterious elements to it, maybe it'll be okay if I like the writing. So, that is my Booktube Parasite video, leeching off of Chris Bookish Cauldron. I'm going to add some vlogs of my reactions, very brief reactions to reading these Kindle previews, and add that in here, so stay tuned. Hey, well, I just previewed Emma Glass's Peach. It's not for me. I only got the first 2-page chapter. It was like a page, really, on Kindle preview. They were really stingy for some reason, and it was beautiful writing, I would say, poetic, but the kind of writing that I would probably quickly grow tired of. But it didn't really give me very much to go on, so I did find, and I'll put a link in the show notes, a audio excerpt with the text on the Poets and Writers website, and I listened and read that and didn't like it as much. So no, I don't think it's for me. It reminded me too much of Amor McBride's A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing, which I didn't get along with and bailed on, so I'm going to skip that one. Okay, well, I have just finished previewing Some Hell by Patrick Nathan, and I am deeply impressed by this. I don't want to spend much time. I thought the writing was fantastic. I was pulled into the story in the very first 2 paragraphs, so let me just read them to you. I read a few pages past, but I didn't need to read very much to know that I'm going to be reading this book very soon. Chris, can my buddy read it? Colin is 13 years old, I found out a couple pages later. 2 days before their father shot himself, Heather foretold her brother's death. By then, Colin was old enough to not believe her, to not fall for every lie or story. He could have rolled his eyes and left the room. He could have called her full of shit. Instead, he chose to hear it like the truth. "It won't be long after your 16th birthday," she said. "At the end of fall, when it's cold. It'll start to snow when it happens. That's how we'll know, Paul and Mum and me." She leaned toward the window above her bed and let the breeze charm the smoke from her throat, past her lips and out the window and into the neighbor's yard. "I can't tell you the exact day. It doesn't work like that. But I can see the snow, and that's the end." Yeah, I'm going to be reading this one sooner rather than later. And now I have read maybe 5 or 6 pages of the Kit de Wall, The Trick to Time. And while I didn't not like it, I didn't dislike it at all. It didn't suck me in. It was interesting enough, but it was moderately interesting about a woman who doesn't sleep all night, notices a man across the way looking outside his apartment at 5 a.m. and they nod to each other, and then she goes to work at the toy store where she works, or maybe she owns it. Didn't grab me. Maybe if I read more, it would, but I was not grabbed in the first few pages the way I have been by a couple of the other ones. Okay, here I am to give you a 1-minute report on doing part of the Kindle preview for The Western Wind by Samantha Harvey. I really liked it. I thought the writing was great. The story is interesting. I don't know how I'll ultimately feel, because once the conventions of the mystery genre take over, I start to get kind of a literary seasick feeling and I just have to bail. That was a bad pun, perhaps. It's set in actually 1491, so late 15th century, in a small town somewhere in England, and near a big river, or near a river, and the priest is the narrator, at least for this chapter, and he's awoken by a man who's found a body in the river. And somebody had gone missing from their town, so they think it's him. But the priest was sleeping in the confessional booth, and that's where the man found him. And I don't know yet why that's where he was sleeping, so I'm very curious about that. And then they go rushing off, and it's a terrible wind, just like today. I'm having a dickens of a time filming outside today, but this spot is nice and quiet. And the description of the priest's cassock and all those, I don't know the words for all the priest costume, but it's billowing and the wind's blowing it this way and his hair, and it's really vividly described. And then they go back to where the man, his name was Carter, I believe, had found the body, and it was gone. So it had probably, we don't know, maybe they think blown downstream. And so now the man Carter's, because it was his mentor, somebody he loved very much, and he's very upset, but now he's upset that he lost the body. And I'm intrigued. Just on the basis of the writing, I will try this novel. Apparently Samantha Harvey has been nominated for the Bailey's Prize and the Booker Prize in the past for other novels, so she's a new writer for me, but I'm looking forward to trying this one. Okay, so just to wrap up, of the 4 books that I did some more reading, some Kindle previews on, I am most interested and actually quite deeply interested in reading Some Hell by Patrick Nathan. And a fairly close second would be the historical novel, The Western Wind by Samantha Harvey. And then the other 2 not so much, but maybe number 3, The Trick to Time by Kit DeWall, and I'm not interested in Peach by Emma Glass, I don't think. So that's what doing this Booktube Parasite tag got me. And now I'll go back to the footage I shot much earlier this morning where I tag people. So, and finally, I'm going to tag a few people. And this is very important. When I tag people, or when anybody who does this Booktube Parasite tag tags people, there is no obligation for you, who I tag, to leech off one of my videos. Absolutely no obligation. Leech off anybody's, sponge off anybody's video anywhere in Booktube land. Feel free to sponge off mine, but that's not how the tag works, okay? So, I tag open. Anybody who wants to do it, please give it a try. I'll be very curious to see if it takes off or not. Maybe it's just maybe it's one of my lead balloon ideas. But Steve Donahue, Chris of Bookish Cauldron, Leah of Hide and Seek, Wilson Sugart, new to BookTube, you should be following him, Jen of Remembered Reads, Ange of Beyond the Pages, Robert of Barter Hordes, Matthew of MCS Books, Aena Macradina, and Lukash, formerly of Lukash's Books, now renamed Totally Pretentious. That's it. Thanks for watching.